what did they do? From 2016 to 2020, they tried to take him out of power. It didn't work. From 2020 on to 2024, they tried to put him in jail and did everything else. Oprah Winfrey the other day said that if Donald Trump wins this election, it will be the last chance Americans have to cast a ballot. Instead of just simply saying, hey, we're in power and we're not serving our constituents, we might change tack on things around migration or trade or culture wars or whatever the thing. They just said, no, this guy is our Emmanuel Goldstein. He is the enemy that must be destroyed. And that's great for people who are in that club, because they've got somebody who they can say, oh, well, yeah, this is the one we hate. But, as the election results show, you have 40% of people maybe hate Donald Trump, really hate the guy. But that's not going to be enough to get you enough extra votes to get you over the line. And the whole thing about the lying and the telling the lies and the character assassination and the destruction, it's because ultimately Trump was pushing up against an establishment that was, a great big hollow edifice. There was nothing inside it in terms of anything to offer anybody. And so he was able, I think, to stand up to this and win.
Yeah, I think you're right that they didn't have much. Kamala Harris didn't offer much to unify people in terms of something positive. So she unified them by hate, 2-minute hate against Trump, or more like a 2-month hate against him. And I just wonder, particularly with the media falling for this, isn't the lesson for the Democrats in this, and also the left in Australia, humility, James, humility. Stop treating half the voters of the country as racists, as fascists, as garbage.
Yeah, well, that's correct. And one of the really interesting things we're seeing out of some of the exit poll results here is that, all of these minority groups, which Democrats had taken for granted, are really starting to shift towards Trump and the Republicans. And this is part of a fundamental realignment that's happening in the political system. And I think it's happening here, too, because, all of these groups that the Democrats had counted on, they realize that this compact that the Democrats and the left offers them, which is really just about, low wages, high crime, dysfunction, culture wars, nuttiness in the schools, doesn't work for them, particularly if they're migrants and they're newcomers and trying to make it in the country. And there's some lessons here also, I think, for Anthony Albanese and Labor, who have been trying to run some real plays out of the Biden playbook. We saw in the Queensland election, let's whip up fear about abortion restrictions, and, ripping off Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness. All of these things didn't work for the Democrats. And if Labor is also concurrently out of ideas in Australia, which it seems like they are, don't rip off these ideas because they don't work for you.
I think that's right. Look, I think the Democrats are also going to have to confront how on earth they ended up with a candidate so terrible as Harris. I know the result was relatively close, and yet, that ignores the advantages of incumbency, the hatred that's been poured on Trump for so long, the massive amounts of money the Democrats are going for them, the incredible media support the Democrats had, and the vilification of Donald Trump. And also some of Trump's unforced errors, I've got to say. I thought he campaigned raggedly, and yet, but they had in Harris someone who had almost no policies, had almost no clue, who was too scared to give a single press conference, who was just trained to perform the same script written for her by faceless backroom people with the same platitudes and even the same gestures. Have a look at this.
Are you ready to make your voices heard? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win.
That's the thing. They campaigned with an empty vessel who couldn't connect on a human level with voters. Is that the case?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, it's completely the case. I mean, remember in 2020, Kamala Harris bombed out of the primaries when she tried to run for president on her own right in 2020 because she was so utterly unlikable. She came to the vice presidency because they needed to balance the ticket. And then, they tried to do this weird thing where they tried to flip out the presidential candidate, do kind of a parliamentary sort of thing, like you'd see in a parliamentary government almost, put in a new leader and then speed run them to an election and hope you get through. That's what they were trying to do here. And we've seen this happen in kind of end-of-term governments in Australia as well. It doesn't work. So, it was an act of desperation. The fact that they talk about democracy and yet obviated this fundamental American democratic principle, which is that nominees are vetted by this primary and caucus process so that, people understand who they are, and then tried to subvert essentially the press by doing an end run around them and not talking to the media, which they keep saying, the First Amendment is a check on American democracy and all this sort of thing, but then completely ignoring it. It's the height of hypocrisy. No wonder they lost.
I just think there's going to be a lot of finger pointing going on here, James. I believe that Barack Obama and Michelle Obama didn't necessarily want Kamala Harris at all. Other grandees foisted her on them. There was a thought that, oh my gosh, we can't, stop a black woman from getting her chance. That would be racist. And they paid for it. James Morrow, thank you so much indeed for your election coverage this week and coming on the show so late at night. I really appreciate it.